What's up, ladies, gentlemen, people, extraterrestrial aliens and everything in between? Today I have a very interesting video to bring you all. I'm going to rank every Overwatch League team from least cursed to most cursed, talking about the ways in which every team has screwed up at least once, starting from the least cursed team and working our way up to the very top with the most cursed team. And with no further delays, let's get started ranking all 20 Overwatch League teams from least to most cursed. In last place has got to be the Shock. This team is honestly just cursed with winning too much, but in all seriousness I couldn't really think of any curse the Shock have ever had. They have a pretty clean track record in terms of just being a good organization, and of course, as we all know, they've won quite a bit, a total of 5 titles now. I guess the one thing I can think of was the infamous C9s against Atlanta in the 2019 finals and Glads in the most recent tournament, but aside from that, Shock might be the only team to have never faced any curse whatsoever. Here I'd like to mention that this list was very hard to make, seeing as from here on out all the teams have been cursed at least one point or another, so yeah, let's continue. Do I even have to explain this one? This one should go without saying. We all know where I'm going with this. The infamous 040 roster that currently holds the longest loss streak in not only esports history, but also in all of professional sports history. The 040 season will forever haunt the Shanghai Dragons. However, aside from that, this team has had a relatively clean track record in terms of curses. However, it is still one of, if not the biggest disaster in Overwatch League history and Overwatch esports history. However, it isn't necessarily a curse, seeing as they've managed to be super successful ever since, winning a total of 6 titles. The only other major fuck-up since then was the Moon Marijuana in the 2020 finals, with Stand 1 playing hog over Fearless, choking the losers finals and not making it to grand finals after being arguably the best team all year long. But aside from that, this team is relatively untouched in terms of curses. Atlanta Reign. Now this is a team that as of recently has been performing pretty well. However, with the Reign it feels like one of two things will happen. Either they'll be mediocre and just the definition of mid like they were in 2020, or they'll perform okay in the regular season and then go on to push far in the tournament but come up short around 3rd place. They're always above average, just not consistently elite. At their peak they can play super well and make it to the grand finals. However, at their worst they can be losing a game to the Titans. This team will always overperform when people are doubting them, but will underperform when everyone is hyping them up. Now we have to talk about the Paris Eternal, the poorest team in the league. Now this is a team that half the time exceeds our expectations with a ton of hidden gems. I'm talking about their 2020 roster, which was arguably the most overperforming roster of all time. And also the 2021 Eternal, which was looking to be a bottom 3 team who ended up going 8-8 and surpassing all expectations despite having 2 mid-season drops, major ping issues, and just overall not having a lot of resources to work with. You can hear more about the 2021 Paris Eternal story in my most surprising and disappointing teams video, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. But anyways, the other half of the time this team is just mediocre. In 2019 they were okay but never anything special, and in 2022 they might be the worst team in the league. Despite keeping a lot of solid pieces from 2021, the team has just not been good in the 5v5 setting. Losing Get Amazed as head coach and replacing their whole DPS line in the first half of the year is not a good look. As the poorest organization in the league, they've had a lot of special moments, yet at the same time faced many struggles, and as we head into Season 6 they're going to be the first team to ever do a rebrand, which only curses the team more. Ah yes, the infamous Chengdu Zone. One day they're losing a map to the 0-16 Valiant, yet the very next day they're 3-0ing the Championship Dragons. Or how about beating the Philly Fusion 2 times in a row yet missing the tournament to them? Or maybe you're thinking of when they lost their starting off-tank in the middle of a stage and still managed to finish second in the stage tournament. There's countless more examples, but you get the point. When it comes to this team, you expect the unexpected. Every year the same thing plays out. They play these wacky wrecking ball strategies, such as wrecking ball triple DPS during the GOATS era, or maybe you're thinking of ball Zarya throughout all of 2020, Elsa their off-tank on Winston, Pharah comps during the Tracer Sombra meta, or whatever the fuck this is. They're always playing some dumb strategy that somehow works against certain teams. But also I'd like to mention another unfortunate thing this team has faced recently, which was their major budget issues. They had such a loaded roster heading into the 2022 season, yet hard to drop about half of it due to financial massacre going on within Huaya, the organization that owns the team. It was a very sad incident. However, they still aren't the poorest organization in the league, but we've already discussed that. The Charge just have a history of horrible decision-making, and it goes way back, starting in the 2019 play-ins when they were running Pharah Doomfist comps and randomly subbing in Happy to run Reaper even though Nero was always better on it. Or how about after finishing top 5 in the 2020 season, going 0-6 in playoffs due to some real crackhead strats, benching Eileen, an MVP candidate right as the Reaper Sombra meta kicked in, which are two of his best heroes, was so incredibly stupid, especially since Nero had barely played after like the first few weeks, and then they put Rio on Sigma after Krong had been an MVP candidate and arguably the best in the league on that hero. I don't care if Rio's hog wasn't that good, the value Krong's Sigma provided that year was too valuable to pass down for his middling hog. And don't even get me started with seasons 4 and 5, running Eileen on Hitscan in season 4 when they were rumored to sign Merit, signing Young Jin as a coach after having no previous coaching experience, replacing the starting flex support last second before the start of season 5, or how about signing an academy team that was unironically better than the main team for the first half of season 5. Benching and then dropping Eileen in the middle of the season even though he's one of their best players. There's probably more examples than that, but you get the idea. They have terrible decision making as a team and as an organization. Next up is the Los Angeles Gladiators. This team along with the Philly Fusion, who we'll talk about later, are the only two teams to have finished top half of the league every season. However, that in itself is their curse, the Gladiators' curse. Always being great but not elite. We all know what this team is capable of at their peak, but aside from a few tournaments they've always come up short in those big moments. They just can never get that extra push to be considered the best of the best. A few examples of this happening are the 2018 playoffs with the famous bamboozle sweep, yet going on to get swept twice by Spitfire again in the next games. Or how about the 2019 playoffs where they looked good against the Spark in round 1, but ultimately fell short? The 2021 June Joust and Summer Showdown are two more examples where they're a high seed and show potential, but fall short. And then of course the 2021 playoffs where a lot of people thought they would go far. After winning the Countdown Cup it was nothing but up for them, right? Well no, unfortunately they had to face both grand finalists after round 1 and went down barely missing the top 4. However, because of the fact that they have now won back-to-back titles and seem to have broken the Gladiators' curse, I can't really justify putting them any higher. The issue with the Spark has always been their roster management. Every year they build these massive rosters and either they end up using the wrong players and wasting talent, or some internal drama happens and they have to panic to make adjustments, or both. In Season 2 they had an 11-man roster and this was probably their best year considering they finished 4th in the playoffs. Season 3 however is where it all starts to go wrong. They had an 11-man roster at the start of the year but had a total of 13 players throughout the year due to Rhea having a wrist injury and Baszi retiring mid-season. Sashin had to be their starting off-tank for a while before they signed QOQ. Sashin wasn't very good at anything aside from Zarya, and especially in a Sigma meta the team did struggle quite a bit, and after Baszi retired the exact same day Architect was transferred in. and you could tell the whole thing was very rushed, seeing as ever since joining the Spark, Architect was just kind of a shell of his former self, not nearly as flashy, and the lack of any huge playmaker made the Spark pretty forgettable in 2020, and then we come to 2021, which was very chaotic to say the least. They come into the year with a 12-man roster and 5 coaches, but by the end of the year they burned through a total of 8 coaches and released 3 players. Even in Stage 2, when they went 4-0, they still fired and replaced a few of their coaches. Then there was the whole MCD drama where he was saying some very questionable things that were hateful to Chinese players despite playing for a Chinese team, and apparently refusing to play with Mika in the starting lineup due to the fact that he was Chinese or something like that. All this and more makes the Spark a very dramatic and weird team, always having these massive rosters filled with potential talent but always messing it up in some way. At least nothing too major has happened in 2022 thus far. For the Spitfire it should be pretty obvious, aside from only winning 7 games throughout seasons 3 and 4 and going an entire year without winning a game during that time, and just generally not being good for the rest of Overwatch 1 ever since winning the league back in 2018. I'd think the biggest curse for this team by far is the fact that they are literally owned by Cloud9. You know, the team who started the most famous saying in Overwatch, the team who had the most infamous throw in Overwatch esports history. This curse will haunt the team forever. Although it isn't as bad as some other curses teams face, it's still something the Spitfire can never forget. The team continues to see 9 even after the Overwatch League started, also the whole Provide drama, but that isn't really a curse. Another one that should be super obvious, their shitty organization. COVID literally ruined this team forever, and it's looking like it's going to be a very long time until they recover. Of course we have to talk about the infamous 2020 blow-up that lost them their whole runaway core, which went to the grand finals in 2019 and was arguably the best team in the league that year. They had to panic sign an emergency roster due to the org not being able to provide a proper facility for the team, which did surprisingly good considering their horrible circumstances. 5 wins was pretty good for a team signed during the middle of COVID, but unfortunately this team has only managed to win 6 games total ever since the blow-up. A 1-win season in 2021 was incredibly sad for the fans considering the glory and success this team was finding just 2 years prior. At least the promise of free breadsticks kept it from being all pain and suffering, but it's overall just such a sad story for this team. The org just doesn't have a very good relationship with the team. Most of the talent they've signed over the past 2 years have been pretty bottom tier, and even this year where it looked like they had some pretty good pieces, they couldn't get any good coaches until it was too late. COVID issues will forever haunt this team, and I don't know if they can ever return to the top tier form they were once in, but because they were once the dominant force of the league, they just barely miss out on the top half of our list. The Outlaws might be the hardest team to watch. The team just always finds a way to mess up, no matter how much talent they sign, no matter how good they look in one game. They'll always find a way to throw it out the window and look terrible in the very next game or so. Think back to Season 1, when the team went 7-3 in Stage 1 and finished 3rd in the stage playoffs to start the year, only to look super mediocre for the rest of the year, or when they beat the literal champions in 2019 Stage 3, and then lost to the bottom-seeded Florida Mayhem only 1 week later. Then we have to talk about the entirety of Season 3. They started off the year 0-5, one of those losses being the infamous Toilet Bowl. Then the team actually looks good for a little while, going 4-2 throughout March and April, but it just all goes downhill from there. They had a few good wins here and there, but it was mostly nothing but suffering. The team was just so outclassed to the point where Hydration, their flex DPS player, had to play main tank. His Winston and Orisay were absolutely bottom tier, but Mumar was just playing so bad that there was sadly no better option. Considering how well he played in Season 1 and 2, it was a shame how poorly the team was doing with him as the starting main tank. along with the fact that they pretty much ended Meko and Raucus's careers, although for Raucus it was more because of Valorant. But anyways, then we come to playoffs where they pick the Uprising as their first round opponent. They seemed very ballsy and confident coming into that match, only to lose 3-1, ruining everyone's playoff brackets and giving the bottom-seeded team their only win of the year that wasn't in 6 maps or more. It still blows me away to this day how Hydration and Blase can swap roles and still throw equally as hard. The team wasn't as bad in Season 4 or this year. The team's actually been pretty good since 2021. However, bits and pieces of the same old Outlaws still remain. Think back to going 4-0 only to not make the tournament due to the red hot fuel, or how about beating the Shock in the Stage 3 qualifiers yet getting swept by the Uprising and the Fuel the very next week, or talking so much trash in the play-in game against the Justice only to end up losing that game in an embarrassing map 5 with a pause at the very end to just rub it in their face. This year, however, has been by far the least painful. However, despite the fact the team is 9-3 this year, they feel more like 10-9 considering how slow and sweaty a lot of their wins have been. They've gone to map 5 so many times this year against teams they really shouldn't be, considering they have the literal Rookie of the Year on the roster. 8 map 5s and only 1 lost is pretty clutch, however still not a good look against some of the teams they've faced. Overall, this team has endured so much pain and misery throughout their history in this league. The team has always had major adaptation issues. They feel very one-dimensional. They come into a game with one good strat, and if that doesn't work, they usually get swept and just fall over. Questionable coaching decisions also have played a role in this team's suffering. Think back to Hydration main tank, not running Rush after Stage 1 of 2021 even though it was by far their best look, Jake Brigg, and a lot more. However, because of their recent success and the fact that they have a pretty stable organization, at least compared to some of the other teams in the top half, 10th place is where they stand. Next up we have the other Texas team, the Dallas Fuel. More recently this team has been relatively curse-free. However, for the first 3 seasons of the league this team was a horrific nightmare for any player who was employed. Let's start with Season 1. Kai as the head coach set up one of the most disappointing rosters in Overwatch League history. A team who signed arguably the best American-based team pre-Owl days and was expected to be top 5 at least, managed to be bottom 3 in 2018 despite all the talent and great personalities. Mid-season drops were happening left and right. XQC, Custer, Rascal, all dropped for different reasons but all made the team's management look horrific. Then to play main tank they signed OG, who then got banned, and then Taimu had to start playing main tank. Then Effect and Taimu both almost retire, and then Seagull is suddenly playing off tank. There's probably a lot more disastrous stuff I'm missing, but you get the idea. That 2018 Fuel team ruined so many talented players' careers. At least a few of them were given another chance like Rascal and Custer, but then we head into Season 2, new coaches, new roster, things looking good especially in the first half of the year when they had their homestand, and they were 9-5. But then in the second half of the year they just fall face flat and don't recover. I don't know what it was. The team was doing so well for stages 1 and 2, but they started to look like their old selves again, going 0-7 to end the year. Then of course the Season 3 decay drama. Coach Arrow was pissing him off so much he refused to play scrims despite literally deadlifting them through more than half the season. Just like in 2018 there were mid-season drops, skewed up roster moves like with the whole Oni God signing and Zachary and Harry Hook retiring mid-season, and then getting rid of their whole coaching staff near the end of the year. It was just like Season 1 all over again but in the pandemic. However, more recently just like the Outlaws. In Seasons 4 and 5 the team has actually been super good, winning the 2021 May Melee and finishing top 4 in 3 other tournaments and the 2021 playoffs, so because of that I can't justify putting them any higher, but for the first 3 years of the league, The horrible management heavily cursed this team, and it will definitely be remembered as some of the worst roster management in Overwatch League history. Take back what I said about the Outlaws. The Justice might also make a case for the hardest team in the league to watch. This team has the least amount of wins out of any teams in the league total. Let's just start off by saying that. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Seasons 2 and 3 for this team are for the most part pretty miserable, aside from Stage 4 2019 and the Hogs Area playoff run, which were both very meta-dependent by the way. The Justice only won 8 games total in those 2 seasons. The team just overall wasn't very good. They signed a lot of great personalities and players like Corey, Stratus, Aim God, Ark, Sleepy, Stitch, Janu, Lulsish, Elivote, and Raw, but were never able to convert it into actual good results. It still baffles me to this day how the Justice managed to grab 2 grand finalists from 2019 yet still be one of the worst teams in the league. That team ruined so many great talents throughout the first 2 years of the league. Actually tragic. However, Season 4 rolls along and they had just brought along DK, who absolutely killed it in the 2020 playoffs and got them a lot of money to build what appeared to be a super team. We had Fury, one of the greatest off-tanks of all time, Mag, a super great main tank rookie from Korean contenders, Jerry, Assassin, all great players, and people had super high expectations heading into the year. I think I saw people putting them as high as 3rd place in the whole league, which personally I think that was overrating them a bit, but what we got in 2021 was just not what we were hoping for. The team just felt very one-dimensional and played extremely passive. Fury didn't look as good as in previous years. Decay just wasn't able to hard carry the same way he did on Dallas. Mag's value was mostly limited to Ryan and Winston. Assassin was extremely up and down, and of course we have to talk about the supports. This was the part of the team that would make or break the Justice heading into 2021. People were overlooking this aspect of the team a lot because of how much talent they had everywhere else, but let's just say, Bebe and Closer just weren't super good. They were outclassed against pretty much all of the top half teams and just very disjointed a lot of the time. They were average to below average for a lot of the year, which did not help the team live up to their high expectations. The team also just had a hard time adapting to new metas, as shown by the fact they were 2-6 in matches with hero bans, starting off both hero pool qualifiers 0-6. And then of course the playoffs where they just barely made it in against the humiliating Houston Outlaws. We're not gonna talk about that game, but anyways, they were clearly the worst team in the bracket, and that was made clear straight from day one. Aside from one map win against the Fuel, the team just looked outmatched, unprepared. Their rush just wasn't as strong as the other top NA teams, and then of course, that happened. So the team went from bottom tier 2 years straight to being one of the most disappointing teams of Season 3, so heading into Overwatch 2 they keep around some of their good pieces and sign a few promising prospects like Happy, Kalios, and Star Rookie Flex support Vigilante, but despite all this, the team still managed to make us all look down upon them. They missed out on the mid-season tournament when it was clear they should have made it in. They went to 5 maps against the winless Titans. They got reverse swept by the Shock in the first round of Stage 1 playoffs, and in the process made so many questionable subs, such as putting Assassin on Tracer over Decay, running Rhine Rush in a map 5 against Chardy in the Spitfire, and benching Happy on control maps. But at the end of the day, the Justice continue to be the miserable, questionable, below average team we all know and hate. No matter what year it is, this team always manages to shit the bed in some extremely disappointing way, and it always makes the rest of the league scoff at them. For the New York XL, it's all in their results. Every year the team gets worse and worse. They start off Season 1 being by far the best team in the league, going 34-6, making it to all 4 stage finals and winning 2 of them, only to pull off arguably the biggest choke in Overwatch League history against the Fusion in the semi-finals, and miss the grand finals. Then season 2 the team is still super strong, going 22-6. They kept pretty much all the players that made the year before so successful, along with adding some promising pieces such as Flower and Nene, yet they choked every stage final, not making it to a single stage final, choking against the Dynasty Titans and Dragons all consecutively, and then come playoff time, they once again choke in the semi-finals, losing a heartbreaking map 7 to the Titans and a clean sweep from the Shock. 2 years straight now they've been top tier yet miss the grand finals just barely, and now we come to season 3 where the team is still good, but is a clear mess. There were a lot of questionable decisions made by the coaching staff, such as Libero Hitscan, Who Are You May, Libero Brig, Mandu randomly coming in for no apparent reason. And then we have to talk about Hotba. He was so overly aggressive on the XL that year that he kind of just left Mano out to dry, and it was all because of poor coaching, as seen by the fact that Mano and Hotba both played much better after joining the Fusion, and just like the previous years, they once again choked out of playoffs in 3rd place APAC, losing in a sweep to the Red Hot Dynasty. However, in 2021 the team did a revamp. They only kept Jonak yet signed a pretty decent looking roster to play around him. However, they were pretty mediocre. They missed play-ins first off, but also the team just wasn't that good. They made 3 knockouts yet never really made anything out of any of them. Sure, they made it to the June Joust but got absolutely dominated when they got there. The team just weren't playing around each other very well. Jonak, Flora and Guangbu were all standouts. All 3 played super well all year, as seen by the fact that Flora was kept around and Jonak was signed to Seoul. Still saddens me that Guangbu never got another chance, but that's a conversation for a different day. For now, the rest of the team just felt very unsynergized. Yakpung played very passively at times and the team generally felt like a dive one trick with him as the starting main tank. Bianca was playing so badly that they had to sign Kalios mid-season, who also played pretty well. Friday just didn't play around Jonak super well. Feather felt like an echo one trick, and then we have to talk about Ivy. Most of you all probably saw my clip from the surprising teams video. He retired for a reason. So yeah, pretty bad year for XL in season 4, but heading into Overwatch 2 they actually look pretty good. The former Mayhem core of Yaki, Gangnamjin and Kuki looked as if it would do them some good, and adding on Kellen, a promising rookie, and Myeonbong on top of it made the XL look like a team ready to bounce back. But so far this year it's been nothing but suffering. One embarrassingly close win against the still winless Titans is all they have to their name. More recently they've been playing a bit better, taking both Texas teams to a map 5. But they still didn't win anything, so I can't give them too much credit. Yaki and Flora are still consistently good, especially Yaki, but the rest of the team is just so off. Myeonbong has been exposed a lot as of late for being an Ana one trick. Gangnamjin main support might be the worst main support in the league, and his flex supports just look washed, and Kellen just hasn't been able to string it together. Worst part is they have no backups, seeing as the only other guy they have is Ho1, who is underaged. Overall though, it's just devastating to see how this team has always choked big games, and gets progressively worse every year. However, because of their success in previous years, I decided to leave them out of top 5. Oh, Florida, one of the worst teams in OWL history, always letting us down. The team literally has the most matches lost total of any team in the league. That should pretty much sum up the history of this team, but you know the drill. Time to run through the history of this team yet again. Starting off in Season 1, they sign a highly anticipated Misfits roster. The All-European roster had decently high expectations, around 6th or 7th in the league. However, what they showed us was just straight up bad, finishing second to last, going 7-33 with 3 of their 7 wins being against the 0-40 Dragons. The team had a few issues heading into the season. They signed only the bare minimum amount of players required and straight out the gates looked terrible. So the team did a whole revamp heading into Season 2, yet despite that looked just as bad if not worse. At least throughout all this, Sao Playo was always a standout. lighting up the kill feed on Widow every time he had the chance to play it, but aside from that the team just wasn't clicking. They looked terrible in GOATS, having no real good DPS to play Brigor's area, and the team made so many mid-season signings. They got rid of McGravy Tuvok and Apply mid-season, and signed Byram Fate Gargoyle and Rain to replace them. They had no real sense of direction. They were constantly making subs and had such a big roster yet little to no versatility at the same time because they only had 2 DPS players. Meanwhile they had 4 supports and 6 tanks. 6 tanks, you heard it right, but internally the team also was very scuffed, making Tuvok drive the team bus, and just generally the way they treated their Western players during Season 2 was just not okay from what I've heard. However, Season 3 was a nice break from it all. This is the one reason why they didn't make top 5 is because of Season 3. The team finished 6th overall in the regular season and made it decently far in playoffs as well. However, Season 4 the misery just continues. The team kept relatively the same core aside from losing Fate for OG and Chris for Slime. Both didn't seem too bad, but especially the first one would be crucial. Things looked great for them in Stage 1. They finished 3rd place in the tournament and were 3-1. However, after Stage 1 they only won 2 other games the whole rest of the year. The first hero pool didn't do them any favors as they went 1-3 in the June Joust qualifiers. However, most people thought it was just a one-time thing, but when Stage 3 rolled around things didn't get any better. They went 0-4 and became the first not winless team all year to have a 0-4 stage. And although the team looked better in Stage 4, it was already too late. Their schedule was way too difficult for them to make a comeback. They had to get through the Outlaws, Rain and Glads, 3 of the top half teams, to try and have a chance at play-ins, but they just couldn't do it. A team who looked so promising heading into the season was nothing but a failure at the end of the day. Despite finishing 3rd in Stage 1, they just couldn't get anywhere, and I think it boils down to the fact that OG just wasn't cutting the mustard. Losing Fate was crucial, and the Mayhem saw that as he went on to win the whole league. OG was super inconsistent and even had to step out for a little due to mental issues. Because of that the whole checkmate main tank thing happened, and we're just gonna ignore that. However, this year the team looks okay. They did a pretty big revamp and are so far surpassing a lot of expectations. But there was still the whole Adam drama where they released him through a Discord call and didn't even give him his own thank you post. Poor Adam. 2 times now he's had a chance at the league but has been screwed over by bad management. However, because of how bottom tier they've been in previous years, they still earn a pretty high place on our list. Always doing these big revamps and signing this super talented rosters, yet most of the time being nothing but a missed opportunity at glory. Just kicking into our top 5 is the Toronto Defiant. Damn, do these guys suck. Defiant are statistically the least successful team in league history. Sure, the Justice have the least number of wins and the Mayhem have the greatest number of losses, but Justice's best year was in the shortest season and the Mayhem's 2 worst years were in the longest seasons. Meanwhile, Defiant are the only team to have never finished top half of the league ever. Starting off in Season 1, the team does actually pretty well to start off their journey in the league. Going 5-2 was a great start. However, after Stage 1 they lost Stellar due to a temporary retirement and replaced him with I'm 37. This was the trade where it all went wrong. After Stage 1 the team only won 3 games for the rest of the season, finishing bottom 4 in the whole league after such a promising start was already pretty bad. Then heading into Season 3 the team signed arguably one of the most marketable rosters of all time, with fan favorites such as Karif, Agilities, Nevix, Logix, and Sure4. However, this team sucked, and when I say they sucked I mean it. Maybe not as bad as 2019, but they were god-awful at times. Some of their players were performing so bad they had to replace half their starting lineup. They got rid of Kellex in exchange for Grooze, Agilities had to start splitting playtime with Psyche, and Numluck became a long-term replacement for Beast. The team wasn't expected to be top tier, but what they showed was definitely an underperformance. However, this year they also had their most successful result, which was the 2020 Summer Showdown where they finished 4th place. That's right, 4th place out of 13 in a regional tournament was the best result this team has ever found in franchise history. Not only was it only because of the Genji meta, but the team was 6-6 in maps during that tournament, meaning neither of the games they won in that tournament were all that convincing. But yeah, yada yada, the team continues to play bad and Agilities plays some hog, and we're on to Season 4. Now Season 4 was okay. This team was literally the definition of mid in Season 4, they would take care of business against the bottom tier teams, but no major upsets in their favor were to be found all year. They were honestly the most forgettable team from 2021, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. They signed some decently good-looking pieces like Sado and Hisu, who were coming off of a banger year on Philly, along with Lestro and Michelle, who had kind of been mistreated by their former teams but both very talented. However, the team didn't really have any super flashy players. The team didn't make a lot of flashy plays and was just generally not very memorable to watch, as seen by the fact that they finished dead in 11th place in the standings. Now we're on to Season 5, and honestly, despite all the talent they signed, the team is honestly looking just as mid as last year. 6-6 and no tournament wins is pretty forgettable. Sad too, since they signed so many talented guys. Hisu coming back, Finale, Muse, Hotba, Twilight, Chokrong, all such talented players. Yet the team continues to be mid. Overall, the Defiant have a curse of just never being good. They're either bottom tier or mid and forgettable. Every year they do a rebuild. Literally, every off-season they keep no more than 2 players. In Season 3 they only kept Logix and Roki, Season 4 they only kept Logix and Beast, and Season 5 they only kept Hisu. The team just doesn't develop any players. And as a result, the team is just never good, since they just throw out everything they've built up the year before, and because of all these blow-ups and rebuilds that never lead to anything, they take a firm spot in the top 5. Oh, the Seoul Dynasty, where do I even begin with them? Let's just get rolling. So the team starts off signing arguably the most high-roster pre-Owl days, Lunatic High. The back-to-back Apex champions were surely gonna make a splash when they made it to the Overwatch League. However, what we got from them was arguably the most disappointing roster of all time. The team was just mid. Like the Defiant, they just never really achieved anything. They had a positive record, yet never made any stage playoffs or the playoffs in general because of the weird format in Season 1, and a lot of the guys disappointed. Miro was not the Winston King he once was. Jaehong was still good, just not as good as some of the other flex support gods like Jonak, but Toby and Flater were still pretty good all year. Heading into Season 2 they were better, not too much better but better enough to make top half. However, there was still some internal drama with Fisher and a lot of inconsistencies. They had a very big roster which made for a lot of subs, and the starting lineup was constantly changing. However, Season 3 is where the inconsistencies really start. Get the obvious out of the way, they made it to the grand finals, but they really weren't the second best team in 2020 by any stretch of the imagination. Their run to the grand finals was entirely because of the Hog Sigma meta, which played right into Gesture and Marvel. But just look at some of these results. 2020 Dynasty might be the most up and down team in Overwatch League history, finishing 11th place in the standings yet second in the playoffs. How this happened? Well, likely due to some of the poor decisions the team made. They had a lot of weird subs at random times, putting in players that they shouldn't have, like Slime and Illicit, but also the way they dumped Michelle. He was supposed to be their starting off-tank, yet Sigma was so meta, and Marvel, despite being a main tank, was actually very good on Sig. However, they strictly wanted to run him, which made the team very poor on anything that wasn't Sigma. Making Marvel flex over to Zarya and D.Va might be one of the worst decisions the Dynasty have ever made. And then there was the whole Giga choke getting reverse swept by the Dragons in the main melee finals. But yeah, you get the idea. It's time to talk about Season 4. Yeah, Dynasty choked a lot in Season 4. They were 12-4, which was the third best regular season record in the league. However, they didn't really do anything in playoffs. The Dallas were the only two teams to make all four knockout rounds throughout the year, yet they choked the first three, and when they finally did make it to a tournament in Stage 4, they were clearly not ready for the fierce competition between the Rainglads and Hunters. And then we come around to playoffs where they choke to the ultimate chokers, who we'll talk about later. The team was so good in regular season matches yet could never pull through when it truly mattered. So at this point the Dynasty have only had one uncursed year, which was Season 2. Season 1 they were a massive disappointment, Season 3 they are extremely inconsistent, and Season 4 they choke every big game. Now in Season 5, with their way things are going, it seems to be a mix between Season 4 and Season 2. They won the first tournament in APAC and at their peak were probably the best team in the league, but when it came time to play in the global tournament they choked very hard. A lot of people had this team winning the mid-season madness, and I personally had them third, but to go 0-2 after having some of the most dominant dive comps in the league was very sad. Overall though, Dynasty have just been cursed with massive inconsistencies, disappointments, chokes, and everything in between, never truly living up to their name. Also the whole main tank graveyard thing, killing off Miro, Fisher, and Gesture's careers all consecutively. Soul really is the place where main tanks go to die. The only exception to this rule is Marvel, who had 3 solid years with the team, but it's scary to think that Smurf might fall down the same road later down the line. Please don't end your career, Smurf, not like this. Starting off the top 3 we have the Philadelphia Fusion. Oh my, we all know where this is going. The Fusion are cursed with always choking, it goes without saying, you all saw it coming. Let's run through their history of choking. So it's Stage 2, 2018, and the Fusion are up 2-0 and are looking to be the next big team in the league. But NYXL rally back and reverse sweep. XL even put Janus in for a map, and they still lost. But then they beat the same team in the 2018 playoffs, back-to-back wins against the XL putting them in the grand finals, and although the first map looked good for them, nothing could stop the Spitfire from taking the championship. 2 second-place finishes for Fusion in Season 1, but it only gets worse from there, as we all know. Season 2 rolls around and they keep pretty much the exact same starting lineup of Carpe EQ, Shadow, Poco, Boombox and Neptuno, and in Season 2 that was the lineup for about 99% of the time, and with this lineup they started off the year 5-2, tying for 3rd place in the league, and in the first round they beat the Atlanta Reign 3-1, but of course as we make it to the semi-finals they choke, getting absolutely stomped by the Shock. The rest of the year they don't really do much, but they at least make it to play-ins, where they choke yet again. They lost the longest game in Overwatch League history against the Dragons in a 4-2 map 7, also the only ever game in league history where a single map was played twice. I'm pretty sure King's Row was played twice that game, but anyways, after having the higher seed and being the better team for most of the year, it was yet again a choked game and a missed opportunity from the Fusion. Now we come to Season 3 where things really start to heat up. Heading into the May Melee the Fusion are 12-1 and looking like the most dominant team in NA, and after a pretty convincing 3-1 victory over the Gladiators, Fusion were looking to make the finals and take their chance against the defending champs. However, they choked heavily in the semi-finals yet again, this time against the Mayhem. Even though Fusion were the lower seed in the tournament qualifiers, I still think they were expected to win. But surely Fusion could win a title this year, right guys? Right. Then we have the Summer Showdown. The team once again looks super confident heading into the tournament, seeing as they only lost 1 game since the May Melee and all their other games were 3-0s. And they finally made it to a finals match against the Paris Eternal, and on their way they had swept the Outlaws and Defiant, but despite looking so good for most of the game they choked up at the last second. A banger of a 7-mapper, one of the greatest games in OWL history, the best Genji head-to-head matchup of all time, and even with EQO's incredible clutch, it just wasn't enough to get them over the line. What's even more sad was that heading into that 7th map the Fusion were undefeated in the Genji Mirror, 9-0 that tournament with the EQO on the Genji, yet they just couldn't get it done when it really mattered in that 7th map. Then we have Countdown Cup, 4-0 qualifier, undefeated heading into the finals, only dropping 3 maps since the Summer Showdown, but yet again choked 4-2 in the finals, this time against the defending champs. Even though the meta wasn't all that different, Fusion still couldn't make it over the line. They even got their revenge on the Eternal in the semi-finals, and what's even worse was that the very next week they swept the Shock post-tournament. So sad, finishing 2nd place twice yet going on to get their revenge on both teams when it was already too late. Now we have playoffs. They once again looked dominant heading into the Final Four, 3 sweeps in the playoffs and playing the Shock relatively close. They flew to Korea with the Shock, quarantined for 2 weeks not being able to go outside, all that only to get swept back-to-back against both APAC teams. Not only that, but they yet again had high expectations heading into a playoff scenario, yet they ended the season in the most disappointing way possible, getting swept back-to-back. Now it's Season 4, the team makes a few adjustments, mostly to their tank line and some of their rotational pieces at DPS, and they started the season off with a bang. 4-0 was way better than a lot of us thought, but right when it mattered, right as we were in the knockout round, they choked an embarrassing Game 6 against the Dragons. They had so many opportunities to win that game, but yet again, they just couldn't get that extra push to make it to the tournament. Then in Stage 4 just 3 months later the team looks super good and goes up 2-0 against the Dynasty. All they had to do was win one more map to finish a 2nd perfect stage, yet they just couldn't win. They got reverse swept, and carried that downward momentum against the Dynasty again in the knockout. However, they were able to get their revenge and beat them in the play-ins, but once they got to playoffs they choked another map 5 against the Shock. The Fusion were winless in map 5 during Season 4, now their Overwatch 1 career is over. Now heading into Overwatch 2 the team does a massive revamp, and so far they've been really good. Sure, they finished 2nd place again to the Seoul Dynasty in the kickoff Clash finals, however finishing 4th in the global tournament was definitely not expected. They've been overperforming, if anything. I had them pretty low in my pre-season rankings, so it's nice to see them play well. However, the curse continues, 12 total chokes throughout all 5 seasons thus far, yet still no title to their name. Whether or not we will ever see the Fusion win a tournament, grand final, or anything like that is uncertain, but the Fusion curse of always choking will live on, and probably isn't going away anytime soon. At number 2 it has to be the LA Valiant. Yes, this also has to do with the fact that, in case you didn't know, I was a Valiant fan before the whole blow up. They were my favorite team ever since I started watching the league. But I think we all know where I'm going with this. The Valiant are cursed with horrible, and I mean horrible, management. Where do I even begin with this shitty organization? Before 2021 the team was honestly one of the most stable organizations in the league, which is saying something. The only major fuck-ups they had ever made before then were the infamous in-and-out incident, and the 0-7 stage with Cookie on Lucio, and heading into 2021 it was looking to be a good year for the Valiant. They had brought back Agilities, held a super fun winter ball event at the end of 2020, and before COVID the team was one of the most beloved franchises in the league. They were the first team to start promoting pride and gay rights. They held lots of events with their fans, such as renting out restaurants for watch parties, and posted tons of great content to their channel, getting lots of fans attached to players like Agilities and Karif with the whole cooking show. But then rumors started going around, horrible rumors after the team announced it'd be moving to the APAC region. The rumors stated that the team would drop their whole roster and would be bought out by a Chinese organization. Valiant then denied the rumors on Twitter, stating that the rumors were false, and that they quote-unquote were excited to grow the brand's global reach. However, on the horrid day of January 29, 2021, the Valiant announced that it had dropped its whole roster due to visa issues, which clearly was not the case at all. They had openly lied to their fans about the decision to move to China and had completely ruined multiple players' careers. And I mean, they could have at least thanked the players they were running over. No individual thank you posts were made for the players or the coaches, which just makes the situation that much worse. Thank God for Kyle Astro, Shax and eventually Dreamer all finding new teams, but for Agility's Rain and Adam, at least for the time being, their careers seemed over, all because of the absolutely evil management of the Valiant. But things only get worse from there. I can't say anyone was expecting the Valiant to be good, but at the same time no one expected them to be as bad as they were. A 2-48 map differential in 2021 was absolutely atrocious, not to mention that 12 of their map losses were full holds. Think about that, a fourth of all the maps they lost were full holds, and of course the fact that they never fully completed a map the whole year, never pushed all 3 checkpoints on a payload map, never captured both objectives in 2CP, you get what I'm saying. Not to mention that one of their players and their assistant coach weren't even practicing with the team. Oh, and also they yet again put a tank player on main support. High B main support was pretty awful, just like Cookie 2 years prior. It was probably the worst roster this league has ever seen, even worse than the 2018 Dragons. Their players were all-time levels of bad. Silver 3's wrecking ball made me want to throw up. The DPS were outclassed at every hero in pretty much every game, and I don't want to hear anyone defending Shou Cheng. He was still just as bad as the rest of the team, having the worst matrix usage in the whole league out of any player on D.Va. I reviewed some of his gameplay. People were saying he was the best player on the team. That's overrating him if anything, but heading into Season 5 the team is actually okay this year. 3 game wins is far better than last year. But that's a very low bar to clear. However, tons of terrible rumors about the team's management have still been up in the air. Rumors about the team living out of Easy Han's mansion, Easy Han and Haker not getting paid, players paying for Marvel's contract, and I'm pretty sure the league made it illegal for players to stream during a league game. Well, apparently it's fine if the Valiant break that rule, because Haker was apparently streaming Apex during one of the Valiant's games. A lot of these rumors may not be true, but it's still so suspicious just how many of them there are, and as the season continues to play out, and rumors may continue to pile in, there's no telling what the future of this terrible organization looks like, as the Valiant will likely be forever cursed by the worst management this league has ever seen. And at the number 1 spot, in our list for the most cursed team in Overwatch League history, we have the Boston Uprising. This team has done it all. They've been through every curse imaginable. They've choked big games. They've had some terrible management. Maybe not as bad as the Valiant, but they're up there. And oh, they've been bad. And I mean really, really bad. Starting off in Season 1, people didn't have very high expectations for them. They were expected to be pretty low in the standings, but actually did surprisingly good. 3rd place in the regular season was very high for a ton of unknown players. However, behind the scenes, a lot was going on. Let me start off by saying the team has some very sketchy management. Thank God they got rid of Huck as their general manager. He is one terrible dude. He has lied to the players and the fans so many times, yet still denies it on social media. And if we go even higher, the team is owned by Robert Kraft, the same guy who owns the New England Patriots, a team known for cheating in the NFL. But Robert Kraft is also known to be a terrible guy, but I'm not going to get into that. But anyways, in Season 1 there was a lot of internal drama. Stryker had a terrible relationship with the management, which is why it's so surprising that he decided to come back to the Uprising in 2022 before leaving again. There were even rumors of him throwing a keyboard at Huck out of anger. Krusty Mistakes and Dame God were also mistreated internally, which is what led Krusty and Stryker to leaving the team for the shock. Neko and Kalios also openly talked about how bad he was. The general consensus about Huck and the Boston management was that they didn't really care about the team. They always sign these low-budget players and try to find hidden gems. Usually it doesn't work, but when it does they develop players only to sell them away for more money. They don't care about winning, they just care about making money, which is obviously a terrible philosophy. And then there was the whole Dream Casper drama. In case you don't know what happened, I'll briefly sum it up. Dream Casper was basically being a P-word by asking for photos from two underaged girls, and of course the team fired him. Another terrible look for the team. However, again, despite all this, the team played very well. They had the first ever perfect stage, going 10-0 in stage 3, however choked heavily in the finals. Despite being 10-0 in stage 3, they lost 3-0 to the NYXL in the finals, a massive choke and one that really doesn't get talked about all that much. But in Season 2 it only really gets worse. Huck trades away Gamsu last second behind the team's back, and the team performed very bad this year, finishing 19th place in the standings. They literally only won a single game in the whole second half of 2019, the team was a mess. Of course we have to talk about the fact that they broke the Dragons' loss streak, having just traded away Gamsu before the start of the season only to lose to him was pretty funny, but also a pretty horrible look for the Uprising. Then in their off-season they traded away 3 players, Aim God Kellex and Blase, all had potential, but no, they just traded them away for money, and in Season 3 they hit rock bottom, only winning 3 games all year, 2 of which were in map 6 or more. The team was absolutely disgustingly horrifically terrible in 2020. I'll start off by saying that the Uprising unironically signed a second internet weirdo, this time being Mufin. He basically is just a very creepy guy who's gotten in some very weird drama with a ton of women, so that's now 2 internet weirdos that the Uprising have signed to their team, Dream Casper and Mufin. Not a very good look, Boston, but anyways, the team just never had any solid backups. Axiom is looking good but then has to step out for a medical procedure. Now they're only left with fusions, so they sign Mikey, who they pretty much never used. Munchkin leaves the team to go join a contenders team. Isn't that funny? Uprising are so bad that a player leaves their tier 1 team to go join tier 2. Absolutely tragic. They sign Halo to see if he'll be a better main support, but then they get rid of Swimmer just a day later. They sign Punk, but then get rid of Brosson. They kept signing these extra players only to drop what should have been the backups just days later. At least Jerry and Myunbong remained consistent pieces throughout the year, but yeah, it was the Uprising's worst year in 2020, and Blase also did an interview with Avast talking about all the shady stuff Huck had been doing behind the scenes. He even mentioned how the players had to practically coach themselves, which is just unacceptable, and lying when he had secretly released certain guys. The team just played so bad. Fusions was one of the worst Oruses in the league. Checks on May is one of the worst things I've ever seen watching Overwatch, and Halo was just so painfully outclassed on main support heroes. It was almost like every game they were playing 3v6. Punk, Myunbong and Jerry were the only ones who felt at least somewhat decent. So Season 4 rolls around and the team has signed yet another pretty cheap roster, and what was looking to be one of their best players, soon, was dropped right before the start of the year due to visa issues, and Boston were okay in 2021. They had some pretty high-quality upset wins like the Houston and Justice games. However, they choked every stage playoff, and not only did they not win a single playoff game, but they also didn't win a single playoff map. They were 0-9 in stage playoff and play-in games, and also they ended the regular season in the worst way possible, breaking 2 lost streaks consecutively. First they get swept by the Titans and end their 14-game loss streak. Then just 2 days later they lose 3-1 to Mayhem, ending their 8-game loss streak. Now we enter the Overwatch 2 era, and so far in Season 5, the team is okay, but continues to make those major fuck-ups that make us all scoff in disgust. How is Huck gonna openly indirectly trash talk Striker after winning a game without him just a day before dropping him? That's just funny. And of course they let go of Marvel, who is now popping off on the Valiant, and are now stuck with Itzel, who is still map winless, and also signing MCD after the whole Spark drama was pretty questionable to some people. A few other small things I might be missing, but you get the idea. At least they did one thing right this year, they got rid of Huck, thank the heavens and beyond. But overall, choking any time they're in a playoff situation, playing some of the worst Overwatch of all time in Seasons 2 and 3, signing some very questionable players, ending other teams' loss streaks, ending so many players' careers, and most of all, having some of the sketchiest management of any team in the league, makes me believe that the title of the most cursed team in the Overwatch League belongs to none other than the Boston Uprising. But yeah, that's my list ranking every Overwatch League team from the least cursed to the most cursed. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Also join our community Discord to talk to me and other amazing members of the Overwatch League community. Link will be in the description. And until next time, bye bye.